Hey, Jeff.
Chris, good to go.
Yes. Yep.
Brad, you're coming off a season like 12 threes they made against Memphis. They haven't really shot the ball well for the season for the most part. What's the challenge that they present from a three-point defensive standpoint?
Well, they present a lot of challenges. That's without Martin scoring one. So, I mean, you've got a group of guys that are all very capable. Love's playing at an unbelievable level, as we talked about yesterday, and continued that last night, another 30-point game. But they just have so many guys that can do that. And I think the other thing that they're really getting is a lot of help off that bench from Hummel. He's coming in, and he's a guy I'm really familiar with, but he's a guy that has made huge shots in the Philly game and made a huge shot last night when Memphis cut it to 3 to extend it back to 6. So they're getting a lot of contributions from a lot of people. Clearly, Love is playing at, again, an MVP-like level, or a top 5 player in the NBA level, and so they present a ton of challenges in that regard.
This time of year, Brad, there's a ton of trade rumors and things out there, and this is your first go around with that. A lot of your players are familiar with that. How has your locker room changed, if at all, with some of the chatter that's going on?
Couldn't tell you if they read it. I don't pay attention to that stuff. The only time I would pay attention to it is if Danny came in and told me that something was being considered, and we haven't had any of those discussions. So, ultimately, this is a job. It's a unique business that we're all in, but I have not seen it affect personalities one way or another. They've just kind of it's been the same locker room for the last 2 months.
Would you like to see moves considered, or do you like the way your team is?
Not my job. So I'll coach the guys that are here, and I'm excited about coaching these guys, and I've enjoyed coaching these guys.
Brad, when Danny does a lot of college scouting, have you given him names or guys you like to look at that
No, but not really. I mean, those guys know. I mean, it's so deep. Their knowledge, the level of amount of information they have, all that stuff. So I guess I'm probably one of the few that can talk with them about, I've seen this kid since he was 15, or I've watched this kid play a ton. I don't know a lot of that. A lot of the details of how those seasons are going individually in college, but I know a lot of the names, and I know a lot of the personalities.
Brad, when you look at a player like Jared, obviously you look at progressions day to day and stuff like that. But do you get a sense of what his ceiling might be, or his skill set in particular?
I don't know. That's a great question. I think a really good guy for him to study when we get into the off season will be Love. I think you talk about a guy that is an outstanding post scorer. Skill level has increased every year. Body is phenomenal. Has completely done a 180 in his body, and so there's so many positives, and there's guys that you can really learn a lot from. But Sullinger's a guy that can score the ball, and those guys there aren't a lot of them in the world that can score at this level. Especially when they're undersized, and he's got a nice knack for it. Now, there's still things that he can get better at, and he will get better at. But again, studying Love would be a good place to start.
How do you think he's doing as
he's shooting it well. He's shooting it well. But I've always thought he's a pretty good shooter. But he's shot it well in the past couple of weeks. He's still a little reluctant at times. But I think at the end of the day, that's just part of getting used to that.
Has he actually added range?
He hasn't added range since I've been with him. He's just gotten better in that range. I think once you start shooting them, it's more about repetition than necessarily range. And obviously, it takes a guy with a nice arc and a nice touch to shoot those. What I always look for in a big guy is, if they haven't shot him in the past, does he get it well above the rim, or is it a flat shot? Because if it's a flat shot, it's going to have a hard time being different. But if he's a guy that shoots it with nice touch and nice arc, it's got a chance.
Did you get to know Hummel at all from your common Indiana backgrounds?
I did not recruit him I was an assistant when he was being recruited. Another one of our assistants recruited him just for a cup of coffee, but then we soon realized we probably couldn't get him. But I have so much respect for him, you know, and he was friends with a lot of our players, and so they had played together in the summer, and I know that he's still friends with a couple of them as well. Coach Shrewsbury coached him for a year at Purdue on my staff, so you know, obviously we're really familiar with him, and he coming back from what he came back from with the 2 ACLs is a remarkable story.
Now that Olenek is back, what does he give you maybe that some of the other guys don't?
Well, I think you can play through the high post a little bit more. You can pass. He can drive the ball from the perimeter. He's another guy that can shoot it. And you know, obviously those are strengths that, you know, aren't unique to him, but he does them at a pretty good level.
And how much of the setback was it missing those 10 games? Where is he?
It's a good question. I don't know that we have the answer to that yet. I think that we'll find that out more in the next couple of weeks. You know, he was okay the other night and didn't feel too bad the next day. So that's the most positive part of that.
Now that you have both Kelly and Chris back, you kind of run into that numbers thing in the front court again. Is that a decision you have to make, or do you kind of do matchups with them now because they both shown?
Yeah, I mean, it's not necessarily just them, but it's a decision that we'll have to just make, and it may be game to game. It may be matchup to matchup. It may be half to half. But the good news is we've got 5 guys in the front court that can really do their jobs to help our team win and to help our team do well.
There's a report that Rajon's return to games would be his call and his call alone. Is that your understanding of things?
Yeah, I don't see how it could be anything else. I mean, I think it's ultimately a person has to be ready and he has to feel good. There are certain physical things that he'll have to meet to be cleared to even be considered for games that he has not met yet. You know, nobody should make that call except for the individual involved, in my opinion.
I know you mentioned it this weekend, but how different is practice with Rondo going 100%?
It's not a ton different because it hasn't been, you know, he's been there for most of the time. Obviously, you know, anytime you get into a little bit of playing, it adds a little bit because he's out there and people are a little bit more trash talked by the other guys, and you know, everybody's excited to have him back out there. But it hasn't changed our dynamic. Our dynamic's been pretty good over the past couple weeks.
Brad, Kevin Love gives such relentless effort, especially on the rebound. What do you think that does for a team, for teammates to see their lineup?
Well, it's really important. Like I said earlier, I think the conditioning factor with him is enormous. He's always been a great rebounder. I saw him play when he was in high school in an AAU event, and he was a phenomenal rebounder then. And you could tell that he had all those things that everybody writes about all the time. But you know, one of the things that I think he's best at that doesn't get much attention is he rebounds. It seems like he rebounds every miss in transition, and so that's a pretty unique period of time to be thinking about blocking out when you're running back. And he just sniffs out that ball and goes after it, and he's phenomenal at it. No question that offensive rebounding can add a great deal of it, you know, momentum in a game and be contagious for your team.
Thanks, Coach.